These pieces of jewelry cost more than you could make in a year. People like you don't belong here." Those words hung in the air, sharp and fragmented like falling shards of glass, plunging the flagship store on Michigan Avenue into sudden silence. Every customer's gaze snapped to the casually dressed black woman who had dared to ask about that $75,000 pink diamond pendant. Some murmured in irritation, others sneered in satisfaction at seeing someone's ambition cut short. Bradley Coleman, the store manager, stood with his arms crossed, his silver hair immaculately styled, icy blue eyes scanning Marcia Wellington's features with undisguised contempt. His every word and gesture carried the weight of his presumed authority in this glittering world. Security guard Jason approached, reluctant but bound to obey. Bradley pointed with a perfectly manicured hand toward the exit. "Jason, please escort this lady out. She's causing a disturbance." No one in the store could have anticipated the earth-shattering revelation about to be unveiled. No one guessed the true identity of the woman just insulted, and nobody suspected that in 2 minutes a storm would sweep through, one that would change not only the fate of luminary jewelers, but the very landscape of America's luxury jewelry industry. Chicago, an autumn morning shrouded in a thin, damp mist. The chill seeped into every street corner, frosting the glass of the sleek high-rises along Michigan Avenue. Standing before the gleaming windows of Luminary Jewelers, the city's most prestigious jewelry boutique, Marcia Wellington tightened her deep navy wool coat around her, inhaled deeply, then pushed open the heavy door. She hadn't dressed to impress. A simple coat, dark jeans, flats, her hair pulled into a neat bun. Yet Marcia carried herself with a quiet confidence and a seasoned poise that made her stand out against this opulent backdrop, her smooth brown skin and calm, determined gaze marking her as someone not to be underestimated. The moment her foot touched the cool marble floor, her shoes clicked in echo beneath the crystal chandeliers that dripped light over rows of display cases. Every detail in the room spoke of extravagance and power, a silent proclamation of true status. Yet to the staff, Marcia was invisible. Along the entrance, young white employees in dark vests, their makeup flawless, bowed their heads in welcome to the limousine-bound clientele. A silver-haired matron in a fur stole passed by, and a lady in uniform hurried to offer her a glass of wine, smiling brightly. Marcia paused, her eyes sweeping the showroom, noting every glance from the security guard, every evaluating stare from the reception desk. She felt the chill of indifference masquerading as politeness, as if her presence had no place in their world. No one stepped forward to greet her. No welcoming smile, not even a perfunctory nod. To them, Marcia was nothing more than a stray shadow, an unwelcome trespasser in this temple of the elite. But Marcia did not waver. She was accustomed to being shut out of circles of privilege, all too familiar with looks of judgment based on skin color and attire. Her shoulders remained square, her stride unwavering. She advanced deeper into the store, her fingertips grazing the glass of a display case holding those coveted pink diamonds. She knew she was entering a world where every judgment was made at first glance, yet none here realized that the unassuming woman before them was, in fact, the new owner of this very establishment. A cool breeze brushed past as the automatic doors slid shut behind her. Outside, the city surged onward, lives flowing by heedless of individual fates. Inside these walls of polished glass and luxury, Marcia Wellington was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, even if she had to start as the outsider no one wanted to notice. Marcia's steps remained graceful and unhesitant, ushering a strange breeze into a space reserved for modern aristocrats. She strolled slowly past the glass cases, skimming by rows of silver and more affordable gems, pieces the average shopper only dared admire from a distance. But rather than pausing at those commonplace baubles, Marcia headed straight for the most prominent display. The case protecting those rare pink diamonds, each stone shimmering like it held the ocean's secrets, secured behind double-paned glass and a state-of-the-art security system. Just then, the glass door slid open, and a gust of cool air swept in, tinged with the scent of expensive perfume. 3 white customers entered. Mrs. Sylvia Harrison, resplendent in an ivory fur coat and oversized pearl necklace, and Mr. and Mrs. Paul and Denise Fletcher, impeccably dressed, their confident gazes sweeping the showroom as if it all belonged to them. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted. 4 or 5 young staff members sprang from their posts, forming an invisible escort to guide the VIP guests deeper into the salon. Soft laughter rippled through the air, champagne glasses were filled, and professional smiles blossomed on every face. Tiffany Moore, the only clerk who hesitated, personally unlocked the cabinet to show Mrs. Harrison a rare blue diamond. Paul accepted a flute of champagne, while Denise draped an arm around a young sales associate, chatting animatedly about the new collection. From Marcia's vantage point, it all played out like a perfectly rehearsed performance, glamour, power, and privilege gleaming in every gesture. Yet for Marcia, that dazzling display only underscored the contrast. There she stood beside the pink diamonds, her hand lightly touching the glass, but no one approached. No one spared her a glance or offered a greeting. Across the room, Tiffany Moore poured wine for Mrs. Harrison, but stole a guilty look toward Marcia. In a heartbeat, Bradley Coleman's ice-cold glare, Bradley Coleman, the store manager, made Tiffany turn away, as if showing concern for a plainly dressed black woman were taboo. Bradley appeared at the room's center, tall and imposing, platinum hair slicked back with gel, his navy suit impeccably tailored. He exuded a chilling authority born of knowing exactly his place in the social hierarchy, the man who decides who gets invited into the inner circle of luxury and who must remain outside, peering through the glass. Bradley didn't need words. His presence alone enforced order. To him, people like Marcia were undesirable smudges on this opulent tableau. His steely gray-blue eyes swept over her with callous indifference before turning back to greet the VIP group with a polished, affluent American accent. Marcia stood perfectly still, feeling Bradley's presence as a cold draft down her spine. Yet she did not flinch. Her eyes methodically catalogued each piece of jewelry, memorizing every gemstone and price tag, and quietly registering how an invisible wall had been erected between her and their world. No one could know that at that moment, old memories surfaced in Marcia's mind. Childhood days chased out of bakeries for being that black girl, boardroom conferences where security mistook her for waitstaff. All of it resurfaced, amplifying the bitterness of the present. And still Marcia remained unmoving, her gaze fixed on the brilliant pink diamonds behind the thick glass. Though the air grew heavier by the minute, she knew this: the real challenge and the truth about this store was only just beginning to reveal itself. The air grew even heavier as Bradley Coleman detached himself from the VIP group and headed straight toward Marcia. His footsteps clicked decisively on the marble floor, drawing curious, inquisitive glances from everyone in the store. His navy suit was pressed to perfection, and the Rolex on his wrist caught the light with every movement. Bradley embodied the very idea of success this world worshipped. Yet beneath that immaculate exterior lay a cold authority, a barely concealed contempt wrapped in the guise of polite civility that anyone paying attention could sense. He stopped in front of Marcia, tilted his head, and offered a thin smile. The same condescending smile Marcia had seen countless times, wherever someone out of place stumbled into the world of the elite. "I can help you with anything?" Bradley's voice carried just loud enough for the receptionists and the Fletchers lingering by the sapphire display to hear. Marcia was about to answer when Bradley cut her off with a sweeping glance from head to toe. He took in her flats, her jeans, her simple knit coat, all in stark contrast to the luxury shoppers around her. The judgment was palpable without a word, but Bradley wasn't finished. "Perhaps you'd prefer to look at our silver collection over there," he suggested, nodding toward a distant display. "Those pieces are only a few $100s, much more within your budget." No sooner had the words left his mouth than nearby customers turned to stare, half curious, half amused. Mrs. Sylvia Harrison let out a soft, mocking laugh, covering her mouth as though she were witnessing a brief comedy act. Paul Fletcher raised an eyebrow, while Denise Fitzpatrick, SSE, averted her gaze from Marcia, embarrassed but too timid to speak up. A hush fell around the pink diamond case. The young staff, Tiffany included, busied themselves with cleaning glass, rearranging jewelry boxes, or checking invoices. No one wanted to get involved in this mess. Still, in Tiffany's eyes, a flicker of unease and even shame lingered. She stole a glance at Marcia, then hurriedly looked away, her hand trembling slightly over a stack of brochures. The chandelier light reflected off the glass, making the pink diamonds glow more brilliantly than ever, but to Marcia it all felt icy, as if the entire showroom had become a stage where she was forced to stand under the spotlight of judgment. She met Bradley's gaze directly, sensing the arrogance and disdain etched in every line of his face and posture. It wasn't just a matter of money. It was the unspoken message that power belonged exclusively to those who decided who measured up to their arbitrary standard of class. Marcia drew a slow, steady breath. Though she'd endured countless rejections and judgments before, this public humiliation, before so many, in a place meant to honor individuality, still sent a sting through her chest. But she knew that what was unfolding here wouldn't be just another fleeting display of Bradley's petty cruelty. It would become a costly lesson for him, and for the entire system he represented. Never had the luxury showroom felt so dark and confining. Yet, as Marcia looked back at Bradley, she did not look away. She understood now. Discrimination didn't need harsh words. A polite suggestion laced with contempt. A thin smile. A dismissive glance. Those were enough to transform a diamond store into an invisible prison for anyone deemed unworthy. And in that moment, every role, every social mask began to crack. Cracks that Bradley himself, with his arrogance, had just set in motion. The tension that followed Bradley's sarcastic remark seemed to bring the entire room to a standstill. Marcia, clinging to the last vestiges of her pride, maintained a calm, steady gaze. That composure was not a sign of weakness but a shield forged by countless challenges. She met Bradley's eyes and spoke in a measured tone. "I'd like to see the pink diamond pendant from the commemorative collection. I've heard it's extremely rare and exquisitely crafted." A beat of silence. Bradley offered a thin smile and arched an eyebrow, as if he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "Do you know how much that piece costs? It's a $75,000 pendant. Definitely not within everyone's reach. We have plenty of items over here that better suit your budget." He emphasized $75,000 with an exaggerated volume, ensuring everyone, both customers and staff, caught his remark. Some patrons turned, curiosity and amusement flickering across their faces. Others whispered, pitying the woman who didn't know her place. Mrs. Sylvia Harrison let out a mocking laugh and leaned in to whisper something to Denise, both of them giggling as if they were watching a satirical skit. Tiffany Moore, the young sales associate still nearby, stepped back. her cheeks flushing in embarrassment for Bradley, yet too timid to speak up. She clenched her hands together and stared down at the marble floor, where Marcia's solitary silhouette reflected in the polished stone. Bradley pressed his advantage, feeding the humiliation just enough to appear doing his duty. "If you like, I can show you some beautiful silver pieces. Only $300 or $400, more fitting for someone like you." He sneered as he glanced at Marcia's simple attire, as if her outward appearance revealed the contents of her wallet. Bradley's smile had lost any pretense of courtesy, morphing into outright mockery. Behind them, Paul Fletcher discreetly pulled out his phone, pretending to check messages to avoid Marcia's gaze, while Sylvia Harrison sighed with bored exasperation, as if this entire scene was mere entertainment on a lazy morning. Other staff exchanged glances with Bradley, eyes shining with curiosity. After all, they'd seen him turn away unsuitable customers before, but rarely with such public, cold-blooded spectacle. Marcia stood firm, not a muscle out of place, her eyes flickering for just a second. She knew she'd become the target of a spectacle Bradley used to assert his power, teaching both staff and VIPs exactly who held the reins of privilege. In that moment, every ounce of basic respect owed to any customer, regardless of station, was crushed beneath Bradley's arrogant hand. His words, glances, and smiles were like a cold blade, carving deeper the walls of disdain he directed the moment Marcia walked in. Yet, in the reflection of those priceless pink diamonds, Marcia's confidence glimmered undiminished. She understood that the lower they pushed her, the more spectacularly the truth would blaze into view, under the very spotlight Bradley could never fully control. Amid the growing whispers, Marcia remained astonishingly calm. She drew in a steady breath, met Bradley's gaze, and spoke each word with clear, pointed precision. "I've never seen anyone asked about their income when shopping here. Nor have I ever seen anyone's bank statements checked except mine." Her remark cut through the shop's facade of courtesy like a small, sharp blade. For a heartbeat, even the staff around the pink diamond case froze. One brown-haired attendant, mid-pour of champagne for a VIP, glanced up, her face flushing with discomfort. But Bradley, unfazed by any challenge, only curled his lip in a dismissive smile. He stepped back half a pace, swept his arm in a grand, theatrical gesture, as if addressing an audience from a lectern. "Our store policy is very clear, ma'am. Anyone wishing to purchase jewelry over $50,000 must provide financial verification. It's a security measure, not just for the store, but for our customers. If you can't produce bank statements, pay stubs, or income certification, I'm afraid I can't serve you that piece." He emphasized store policy like a protective shield for his personal authority, though it thinly disguised raw prejudice. Just then, in the VIP section, Mrs. Sylvia Harrison accepted a $120,000 diamond necklace from Tiffany Moore. Sylvia beamed, tried it on immediately, and nobody asked her for a single document or proof of funds. She selected freely as Tiffany adjusted the mirror and chatted with her like a longtime friend, while Bradley kept his eyes locked on Marcia, ready to summon security at the slightest misstep. The air in the store felt suffocating, as though an invisible barrier had been raised between two worlds. On one side, the proper customers, trusted and indulged. On the other, Marcia, forced to prove her worth simply because of her skin color and attire. Bradley squared his shoulders and challenged her directly, arrogance and defiance in his tone. "I'm merely following procedure. Don't make this more than it is. If you want to handle expensive jewelry, you must comply with the same process as any other customer." Yet everyone could see that this process was enforced on only one person, and the entire store bore witness to its blatant injustice. Marcia's eyes flicked to Tiffany, catching the young woman's look of quiet distress. The look of someone who's seen discrimination but lacked the courage to speak up. It was a painful truth in a world where luxury can be bought, except respect and fairness. Bradley's words had transcended personal mockery. They were a denial of Marcia's humanity, an illustration of how this system operated, hiding bias behind policy, wielding power to maintain exclusion beneath the sparkling diamonds. And in that moment, Marcia understood. She was not alone in this injustice, but she would be the first to bring the truth into the light. The moment Bradley's words cloaked in policy faded away, Marcia's face remained impassive. She held Bradley's gaze without flinching, her voice steady and cutting. "I actually intended to buy the entire commemorative collection, over $650,000 in total." In an instant, the whole store fell silent. Some customers turned, eyes glinting now with anticipation of the next act. Mrs. Sylvia Harrison smirked, Denise Fletcher looked astonished, and Paul Fletcher leaned toward Bradley, giving him a weary, knowing shake of the head. Bradley Coleman, unabashed in his mockery, threw his head back and laughed so loudly the champagne glass in a VIP's hand trembled. He wasn't merely laughing at Marcia's words. He was laughing at her ambition, her worth, a merciless denial of her very value. "Well then, I'm the President of the United States." His boast echoed through the showroom, deliberately amplified so everyone could hear, the tone dripping with arrogance, as if he'd just delivered the punchline of a lowbrow joke. He turned toward the security desk and swept his arm out like a general commanding his troops. "Jason, escort this lady out. Don't let her cause any trouble or distract our real customers." Jason White, the tall black security guard standing a few feet away, stepped forward. His broad frame and quiet, wary eyes spoke of someone who'd known hardship. He froze at Bradley's command, one hand clenching on his belt as guilt and confusion clouded his glance toward Marcia. Jason didn't want to humiliate someone who shared his skin. He knew too well the sting of being singled out, shoved aside because of ingrained prejudice. Yet his fear of losing his job and Bradley's frosty authority kept him from refusing the order. "Ma'am, please cooperate and step outside," Jason murmured, his voice small and trembling, as though pleading for Marcia to spare him further conflict. But all eyes in the store were fixed on them. Customers, staff, even Tiffany Moore, whose face had gone pale, her eyes lined with sorrow at the spectacle unfolding. Bradley lingered, arms folded and smirk intact, clearly satisfied that his imposed order was upheld no matter the cost. Publicly shaming a stranger, trampling on someone's dignity. Around the pink diamond case, the air felt as if frozen in place. The gems still sparkled under the lights, but here they only served as a backdrop to an unrelenting act of humiliation. At the center of it all, Marcia felt a storm of pain, outrage, and silent humiliation swell within her. Yet she did not look away, nor did she plead or erupt in anger. She understood that a black woman standing firm between insult and authority was the greatest form of resistance, no matter how much everyone around her wanted to see her break. In that moment, even those accustomed to glittering elegance sensed it. Something had fractured, a boundary had been crossed, and behind those brilliant diamonds lay deep, unerasable cracks. Jason's gentle plea echoed through the sudden hush. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I have to ask you to step outside at my manager's request." That sentence cut through the surge of emotions swelling inside Marcia like a blade. She stood motionless, her knuckles whitening around the strap of her handbag. Every ounce of composure she'd honed through years in boardrooms full of white men kept her calm on the surface, but beneath it, her dignity was fracturing. No tears fell from her eyes, no sign of despair. Yet beneath the mask of poise, shame and rage burned through every fiber of her being. In a place heralded as the pinnacle of service culture, she, an impeccably polite, dignified customer, was being humiliated and expelled for simply not fitting an arbitrary standard. The showroom felt frozen. Customers who'd stared curiously moments ago now pulled out their phones, pretending to check messages while secretly recording. Some, young and unhesitant, lifted their phones openly, their faces reflecting anger and disgust at the injustice unfolding. A low murmur rippled through the crowd, each whispered remark a fresh sting in the already oppressive air. "I can't believe they're this discriminatory. All because she's not wearing designer? It's absolute humiliation." In the VIP section, Sylvia Harrison crossed her arms, her expression one of gleeful satisfaction at the spectacle. Denise Fletcher wavered between looking away and leaning in for the finale. Tiffany Moore, the lone staff member showing any remorse, stood frozen, lips pressed tight, her hand trembling over a jewelry tray. Even Jason, the burly guard, couldn't mask his regret. He avoided meeting Marcia's eyes, his voice shrinking as he spoke. "Please understand, ma'am, I don't want to do this, but I have no choice." Those words echoed in Marcia's mind as a merciless reminder of a power structure that always crushes the vulnerable first. She bore no grudge against Jason, no resentment toward Tiffany, or even the sneering customers. She knew they were all products of an inherently unjust world, and today that injustice had been laid bare in broad daylight. Bradley now stood behind Jason, arms folded, his gaze challenging the room. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. "This lady has disrupted store operations, inconvenienced our VIP patrons, and disturbed the peace. We do not tolerate such behavior at Luminary Jewelers." In that declaration, Marcia was not only cast aside but labeled a troublemaker, providing cover for their blatant discrimination. She felt the chill of the marble under her heels, the heavy perfume drifting from the socialites, the clink of crystal glasses. A suffocating symphony surrounding her in the eye of this public shaming storm. Surrounded by apathy, mockery, and the fear of others being implicated, Marcia stood unbowed, her eyes locked on Bradley. She did not weep or plead. Inside her, the resilience forged by years of quiet struggle flared, like a spark waiting to erupt into an unstoppable blaze. In that moment, though it seemed they had won, no one, not even Bradley, realized they had driven the unnoticed woman to her limit. And when a person's dignity is trampled so completely, the truth always finds its own way to shine through. The tension in the store was taut as a wire. When Jason, still merely the enforcer, laid a hand on Marcia's shoulder, it seemed the ordeal would end with a quiet escort out. But at that moment Marcia slowly pivoted, her voice strong and resonant. Not the tone of a humiliated customer, but the authority of a leader used to making decisions in the highest pressure boardrooms. "Don't touch me, I can walk on my own. But before you remove me, I'd like to introduce everyone. I am Marcia Wellington, CEO of Luminary Jewelers." In that instant, every sound died. Jason's eyes went wide in shock, his hand recoiling as if burned. His face drained pale, a mixture of astonishment and fear, as though he'd just realized he'd nearly become complicit in a historic scandal. Tiffany Moore, stationed at the jewelry counter, could hardly believe her ears. Her mouth fell open, nearly dropping the tray of diamond rings in her hands. Her eyes, equal parts sympathy and bewilderment, darted from Marcia to Bradley, then back to Marcia, searching for an explanation for the impossible scene. The entire showroom froze. Customers covertly filming pulled their cameras closer. Some gaped in stunned silence. Others rose to their feet, while Sylvia Harrison let her purse slip from her grasp onto the leather settee, oblivious. Bradley Coleman, the same man who minutes earlier had stood triumphant, master of his domain, now stared, his face flushing with shame and confusion. His voice turned hoarse as he forced out a half-hearted smile. "You've got to be kidding. I want to see your ID." Marcia didn't hesitate. She calmly retrieved a small leather wallet from her bag and produced an ID card emblazoned in bold letters. Marcia Wellington, Chief Executive Officer, Luminary Jewelers. The photo on the card matched the poised, resolute woman standing before them down to every detail. Bradley lunged to snatch it, but Marcia withdrew it, her tone icy and firm. "I do not consent to you touching my personal belongings. If you doubt me, call Gloria Winters, the executive director, right now. Her number is in your store's emergency contacts." Marcia's composure and command completely upended the situation. All eyes turned to Bradley, waiting to see how he'd justify what had just occurred. A wave of unease rippled through the room, as though a seismic shift was happening beneath the polished marble floor. Bradley swallowed hard, fumbling for his phone, his shaking hands betraying his embarrassment and fear. Tiffany, still clutching the jewelry tray, dashed to the fixed phone behind the counter, dialing frantically, her gaze lifted to Marcia with a mix of admiration, relief, and lingering shame. The customers who'd been filming murmured among themselves, some hurriedly typing messages, others live-streaming to social media. The store's atmosphere was no longer one of arrogant exclusivity, but the thick silence of collective shock, role reversal, and the moment when the underestimated party emerged as the most powerful figure in the room. Marcia stood silently, her expression serious yet unassuming. Her eyes didn't rest on any one person, because she knew that from this moment on, nothing could ever go back to how it was. Those who had sneered and belittled her now understood they'd made a mistake that would be remembered long after today, and this was only the beginning of a storm unprecedented in the history of Luminary Jewelers. The store atmosphere crackled with tension. As Jason, still merely the messenger, rested a hand lightly on Marcia's shoulder, it seemed the ordeal would end in a quiet escort outdoors. But in that instant, Marcia pivoted deliberately, her voice ringing out with authority. Not the tone of a humiliated customer, but that of a leader accustomed to making decisions under the utmost pressure. "Don't touch me. I can walk on my own. But before you remove me, let me introduce myself. I am Marcia Wellington, CEO of Luminary Jewelers." Silence fell like a curtain. Jason's eyes widened in shock and his hand recoiled as if burned. His face drained of color, a mix of disbelief and fear, as though he'd just realized he'd nearly become part of a historic scandal. Tiffany Moore, stationed at the jewelry counter, stared in stunned disbelief, nearly dropping the tray of diamond rings in her hands. Her eyes, filled with sympathy and astonishment, shifted from Marcia to Bradley and back again, seeking an explanation for the impossible. The entire showroom froze. Customers who had been secretly filming edged their cameras closer. Some stood slack-jawed, others rose to their feet. Mrs. Sylvia Harrison let her purse slip from her hand onto the leather sofa, unaware. Bradley Coleman, the man who minutes ago had reigned supreme over his kingdom, now gaped, his face flushed with shame and confusion. His voice cracked as he tried to recover. "You've got to be kidding. I want to see your ID." Marcia didn't hesitate. She calmly withdrew a small leather wallet from her bag and produced an ID card embossed in bold letters. Marcia Wellington, Chief Executive Officer, Luminary Jewelers. The photo matched the poised, resolute woman before them in every detail. Bradley lunged to snatch it away, but Marcia withdrew it, her voice cold and commanding. "I will not allow you to touch my personal property. If you have doubts, call Gloria Winters, the executive director, right now. Her number is in your store's emergency contacts." Marcia's composure and authority completely upended the power dynamic. All eyes turned to Bradley, waiting to see how he'd justify the spectacle they'd witnessed. An uneasy hush spread through the room, as if a seismic shift had rattled the polished marble beneath their feet. Bradley swallowed hard and fumbled for his phone, his trembling hands betraying his embarrassment and alarm. Tiffany, still clutching the jewelry tray, darted toward the fixed counterphone, dialing frantically while gazing at Marcia with admiration, relief, and lingering shame. The customers filming whispered among themselves, some hurriedly typing messages, others live-streaming the event. The store's atmosphere no longer reeked of elitist arrogance but resonated with stunned silence, reversal of roles, the moment when the once overlooked person emerged as the most powerful figure in the room. Marcia stood silently, her expression grave yet unassuming. Her eyes never lingered on any one face, because she knew that from this moment on nothing could ever return to the way it was. Those who had sneered and belittled her now understood they'd made a mistake destined to be remembered, and this was only the beginning of an unprecedented storm in Luminary Jewelers' history. After the unassailable truth was laid bare, the store fell into a heavy hush. At that moment, the glass doors swung open. Gloria Winters, the COO with her sleek silver hair, entered flanked by 2 legal advisors. Her usual warm smile was gone, replaced by the grave expression of someone who'd weathered major crises. Marcia stood tall and faced Bradley Coleman, who now looked stripped of all confidence. The sharp lines of his face had softened into confusion, shame, and isolation. Employees, customers, even Jason, the guard who'd hesitated moments before, fell silent, hanging on every word from these 2 most powerful women at Luminary. Marcia's voice rang clear, carrying through every corner of the showroom. "Bradley, were you waiting until you knew I was the CEO before treating me with basic decency? If I were just some ordinary woman, no title, no wealth, would you have felt free to demean and shame me the same way?" Her question wasn't aimed only at Bradley. It was an indictment of every hidden prejudice entrenched in this world of luxury. All eyes turned expectantly to Bradley, but he only swallowed, voice trembling. I was just following procedure. You know how expensive the merchandise is. If we don't control—" His words trailed off into self-justification. Marcia refused to let him hedge any longer. Her tone was crisp, unyielding. "Procedure does not grant you license to discriminate. Procedure does not justify humiliating a customer because they don't meet your arbitrary standards. And procedure certainly cannot serve as an excuse for your arrogance and selfishness." She pivoted to Gloria, voice steady and commanding. "I hereby notify you that Bradley Coleman is terminated effective immediately, with no notice required. Gloria will oversee his access revocation and escort him from the premises. All severance will be provided in full. That's the humanity you failed to extend to every customer he has scorned here." Her words rang out like a bell in a cathedral, echoing through every heart. Bradley stood dumbfounded, lips quivering, eyes darting for an ally, only to meet cold indifference or bowed heads. "But I have a family. I've worked here for over 10 years, he stammered. Marcia cut him off without hesitation. How many customers and candidates have been turned away, humiliated, and rejected because they didn't suit your tastes or fit your world. Have you ever considered their families, their dignity? This is the inevitable outcome of your choices. This is not a single mistake, but a lifestyle and a mindset. Gloria stepped forward, motioning to her legal team to escort Bradley away. He stumbled out, shoulders slumped, leaving behind the empire he once ruled, a hollow shell now looked upon with both pity and contempt by those he'd belittled. The store remained in solemn silence. Yet, in that stillness, everyone understood a new era had begun. Marcia had not only fired a manager, but had declared war on an antiquated system of thinking, ready to dismantle invisible barriers and rebuild luminary on true principles: respect, transparency, fairness, and compassion. And in that moment, justice ceased to be mere words on paper. It spoke at last under the cold sparkle of diamond chandeliers in a world that once prized luxury above all else. The tension in the showroom snapped like a taut string. Just as Gloria and the two legal advisors disappeared down the back hallway, Bradley, who seemed resigned to his fate, whirled around, his face flushed with humiliation, voice cracking with anguish. Just one mistake and I lose everything? I have a family, I have to live too. Why does one moment of misjudgment destroy my entire life? Bradley's pained cry echoed into the heavy silence. Former allies, colleagues who once followed his every command, now watched him with detached, uneasy stares. No one rose to defend him. The isolation of a once powerful man now laid bare. Marcia stepped forward calmly, her eyes firm, yet tinged with compassion. Her voice rang out clear and steady. It wasn't a single mistake. It was a pattern. It was the mindset of selective respect, deciding who deserved dignity and who should be cast aside. How many customers have you hurt? How many walked out of this store shamed while you shrugged it off? Have you ever considered their pain, or were you too busy fostering your own arrogance? Her words cut through the pretense. The murmurs died away. Everyone sensed this was more than a personal confrontation. It was a call to conscience in a place long steeped in exclusion. Bradley stood awkwardly, lips pressed tight, eyes glistening with anger and regret. He searched the crowd for support, but the employees who once whispered encouragement whenever he put someone in their place now hung their heads in silence. Tiffany Moore, the youngest member of the team, avoided his gaze, regret flooding her expression for every time she'd chosen fear over speaking up. Security guard Jason White, who had hesitated earlier, softly approached and placed a hand on Bradley's shoulder. The touch was no longer obedience, but a shared sorrow between two people once on opposite sides. "Please come this way," Jason murmured, his tone gentle, conveying the helplessness of someone caught between justice and fear. Bradley was led away, his silhouette receding through the back door. A profound hush settled over the store, not the oppressive silence of bias, but the relieved breathing of a place unburdened at last. The staff who had remained silent, complicit in injustice, looked at one another. Some turned to Marcia with grateful eyes. Others nodded quietly, a silent vow to never let the past repeat themselves. The customers, those who had once smirked and those who secretly filmed, stood stunned, as if realizing for the first time that true value doesn't lie in diamonds, but in the courage to confront one's conscience and change. And in the moment Bradley walked away, Luminary Jewelers began its transformation, starting not just with a dismissed manager, but with a new commitment to right and wrong in every person who walked through its doors. A heavy silence settled over Luminary Jewelers after Bradley was escorted away, one that crackled with tense anticipation. Staff clustered in small groups by the display cases, and customers watched quietly. No one wanted to leave when they realized they were witnessing a historic turning point. Not just for this store, but for an entire service industry long rife with hidden injustices. Marcia stood in the center of the grand salon, the chandelier light falling on her calm, determined face. Her words weren't orders, they were a declaration, ringing out powerfully in a space freshly freed from the old tyranny of prejudice. I'm announcing that this store will close for 2 weeks so every team member can be retrained, from the basics of customer service and interpersonal skills to, most importantly, respecting human dignity and fairness. During this period, you will all receive your full pay. If anyone feels unable to embrace this new culture, one with zero tolerance for discrimination, bias, or injustice, you're free to resign now, and you'll still receive your full severance. The room held its breath. Some of the more senior employees looked uneasy, but most visibly exhaled in relief, their eyes now reflecting admiration and hope rather than doubt. A few nudged each other and nodded, as if they'd long awaited this moment. Marcia continued, her tone warm, yet resolute. From today forward, any act of discrimination or belittling of customers or colleagues based on background, appearance, or skin color will be completely unacceptable. I don't want people who merely follow orders. I need people willing to stand up for what's right. If you're brave enough to help me rebuild Luminary, stay. If not, you have my blessing to leave, and I will respect that decision. At that moment, Tiffany Moore, the young associate who'd silently carried the weight of this discriminatory atmosphere, stepped forward, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Marcia. I know I should have spoken up sooner, but I was afraid. I was afraid of losing my job, of being ostracized. I told myself staying silent was safer, but today I see that silence is part of the injustice. Marcia smiled gently and placed a hand on Tiffany's shoulder, her eyes both compassionate and firm. Fear makes us silent. But I don't blame you, Tiffany. I promise from now on there will be a safe channel for reporting wrongdoing. Anyone who witnesses or experiences injustice can come forward without fear of retaliation. We will protect one another. Only courage and unity will set Luminary apart. Her words felt like a warm breeze after the storm. The young staff who'd long carried guilty consciences nodded in unison. Miguel Santos, the Latina team member who'd watched friends get disqualified from interviews for having non-American names, offered the first genuine smile he'd had in years, as if a weight had finally lifted. The customers watched too, some quietly wiped away tears, others burst into applause. Not for a Lux performance, but in honor of courage and the power of change. Marcia surveyed the faces before her, knowing the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But in their eyes she saw faith. That from today onward, Luminary Jewelers would truly begin a new chapter, where genuine values are recognized, and every person is respected equally. Marcia's announcement of a new culture at Luminary hadn't even settled when the first ripples spread beyond the store's glass walls. Just hours after the incident, videos shot by customers and staff showing Marcia being humiliated, asked to leave, and then defiantly identifying herself as CEO, were all over social media. Clipped together from multiple angles, the footage went viral, not just in consumer rights groups, but across major forums and national and international news channels. The image of Marcia, a plainly dressed black woman exuding quiet strength, exposing the truth at the heart of the luxury world, held millions of viewers spellbound. The hashtag #Luminary Lessons trended on Twitter and other platforms for days. Under each video, thousands of comments poured in. Outrage at Bradley, admiration for Marcia's courage, and countless shared stories of similar silent indignities people had endured. Longtime Luminary clients posted public endorsements of the brand's turnaround, pledging to return only if they saw genuine change. Letters and emails of support flooded corporate HQ from minority communities, human rights organizations, and women's business associations alike. The story spread so fast that within 24 hours, major networks like CNN, NBC, and ABC invited Marcia and COO Gloria Winters for live interviews. On television, Marcia appeared unpretentious, just as she was that day, yet radiated the confidence of someone who knows her worth and refuses to hide the truth. She took on tough questions about racism, privilege in luxury retail, the compromises of young staff like Tiffany, and the shame of employees who had once enabled it. Standing beside her, Gloria admitted candidly, "We thought serving the wealthiest customers was enough. We've learned that true service is fair, respectful, and inclusive of everyone." Marcia's stirring remarks resonated far beyond Luminary. Luxury can't be a fortress closed to all but the few. It must be a place where everyone deserves respect. If we don't name injustice, we become part of it ourselves. She recounted the moment Jason, the black security guard, wrestled with keeping his job versus doing the right thing. The moment Tiffany overcame her fear to speak out, and why a corporate culture can only thrive when every employee is safe from intimidation and empowered to tell the truth. The impact extended beyond Luminary's walls, reaching competitors and major luxury retailers. Facing public pressure, many launched anti-bias training, overhauled service protocols, and publicly vowed leadership-driven change. Prominent talk shows hosted experts, lawyers, journalists, and discrimination survivors, debating the incident as a turning point in American social consciousness and consumer culture. The conversation grew bigger than one store. It sparked millions to reflect on their own roles, whether as customers, employees, or leaders, in safeguarding dignity and fairness. What began as a seemingly isolated incident turned into a nationwide debate on ethics, conscience, and transformation, not only in one industry, but across society as a whole. In the wake of the public outcry, Marcia Wellington's commitment to reform at Luminary went far beyond words. It became a full-scale overhaul. 6 months after that fateful incident on Michigan Avenue, Luminary Jewelers reopened with a stunning new look that left everyone who passed by speechless. The once opaque glass facade, designed to separate insiders from outsiders, has been replaced by floor-to-ceiling transparent panels, inviting every passerby to witness an atmosphere of openness and warmth. Low consultation tables stand in place of the high, fortress-like counters. No more selective screening or biased greetings. Customers of every skin tone, gender, and age are welcomed with genuine smiles and respect. A prominent sign beside the entrance now reads, "Welcome. Excellence belongs to everyone." At the heart of the showroom is the Equity Collection, featuring designs by diverse emerging talents. Desiree Johnson, a black college student who once hesitated to apply to a luxury brand, now headlines the new fine jewelry line for her generation. Miguel Santos, raised in the city's underserved West Side, is celebrated for his bold, culturally rich designs that champion equality. Each piece is displayed alongside a plaque telling its creator's story of overcoming barriers and pursuing creative dreams, underscoring not only aesthetic value but human value. National and international media flocked to cover the grand reopening, drawn not only by the dramatic transformation of a brand but by the inspiring story behind it. A company brave enough to own its mistakes, embrace change, and elevate compassion and fairness as its guiding principles. Reporters competed to interview Desiree, Miguel, Tiffany, and the young customers who at last felt they truly belonged in a luxury setting, free from judgment based on appearance, accent, or skin color. Tiffany Moore, once the timid staffer who feared speaking up, is now assistant manager. She not only oversees operations but leads training for new hires, emphasizing active listening, respect, and civil, equitable conduct. These sessions have evolved from mere formalities into heartfelt exchanges where personal experiences of bias and lessons in empathy are shared as essential parts of the profession. Standing at the podium, COO Gloria Winters proudly declared, "Luminary will no longer be a brand of exclusion, but a symbol of inclusion, respect, and the unlocking of every individual's potential." And there is Marcia Wellington, eschewing any spotlight of self-congratulation, standing humbly among the flow of customers. She listens to laughter echo through the showroom, watches children of every background playing by the display cases, and chats with Desiree and Miguel about ideas for the next collection. In her eyes glows a quiet pride, not in sales figures but in having set a new standard for the entire high-end retail industry. Luxury is no longer a privilege. It is an opportunity, a space where everyone finds respect and discovers their true selves. Luminary's rebirth is more than a mere store renovation. It has become a living emblem of a society in transformation, one that values people above all glittering trappings, where every old wound fuels a fairer future. The reopening celebration wound down as a pale sunset stretched its glow across Michigan Avenue. Yet guests lingered in the shop, their faces alight with genuine joy and warm smiles. In one corner, beneath a bold sign reading, "True luxury equals respect," Marcia Wellington quietly observed the scene. Tiffany Moore, now more confident and poised, was leading Desiree Johnson on a tour of each newly redesigned area, recounting the origin story behind every collection and encouraging the young designers to dream boldly. Standing beside Marcia, Gloria Winters, her friend and colleague who had witnessed every step of this historic transformation, leaned in with a mixture of admiration and gentle concern. "Do you ever regret that stormy day? Do you ever wish it could have been less tumultuous?" Marcia shook her head, offering a soft yet resolute smile as her gaze swept the room. In every corner she saw patrons of every background, black and white, young and old, dressed to the nines or in casual attire, all confidently trying on the finest jewelry, chatting animatedly with staff, with no hint of self-consciousness or fear of being judged as there once had been. Her reply came in a warm, steady tone that carried throughout the showroom. "The most precious thing here isn't gold or diamonds. What truly has infinite value is the moment when each person finds the courage to embrace change, not just for themselves, but for those who have never been heard or truly respected. Sometimes it takes a great storm to sweep away the moss of prejudice from these walls so that real light can shine in." Her words felt both a closing chapter and a new beginning. Everyone present sensed the depth of the legacy Marcia and Luminary had created, not simply a resurrected brand, but a beacon illuminating the hidden corners of luxury retail, where inclusion, respect, and fairness reign supreme. When customers finally departed, clutching their little velvet boxes, they carried with them far more than a piece of jewelry. They left with the experience of being truly seen and genuinely honored. The staff, from seasoned veterans to newcomers like Desiree and Miguel, understood that each day here wasn't just about sales. It was about safeguarding and passing on a profound set of values. Outside, the luminary sign glowed brightly in the evening light, not as a symbol of exclusion, but as a lighthouse beacon, reminding everyone who passed by. Only when justice, dignity, and courage speak up can those once forgotten stand at the very center of the story. And so, the journey of Marcia Wellington, the black woman once underestimated in her own store, became a wellspring of inspiration for anyone who has ever faced injustice or believed justice to be a distant dream. Because true justice doesn't spring from grand gestures alone. It begins in a heart that refuses to yield to any barrier, and in a choice to stand up, even once, for what is right. That, above all, is Luminary's greatest legacy, for today, for tomorrow, and for every soul seeking their true worth amid a world of glitter. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share with friends, and subscribe so you won't miss our next inspiring journey. Let's build a community where every human worth is celebrated.